My thumb hovered over the bank notification pop-up on my work phone, my chest tight enough to crack a rib. The number glowing on the screen burned into my retinas. $3,421 and 62 cents deposited. I'd crunched the payroll math 3 nights prior, cross-referencing client commission slips, quarterly performance bonuses, and my base salary after tax. My payout was supposed to hit roughly $11,860. There was a gap of exactly $8,438 wiped clean off my earnings, 6 full years of hard-earned commission cash stripped away in one single payroll adjustment. I leaned back against my office desk, my knuckles white where I squeezed the plastic phone casing until my fingers ached. That missing chunk wasn't just office bonus money. It was the next 3 cycles of targeted chemo my mom relied on back in her hometown hospital, the medication her oncologist swore would buy her more months, more chances to sit across the dinner table with me. Every single cent of that 6-figure commission was earmarked for her life-saving treatment, and Wang Zong, our CEO, had erased it over one single emergency absence I'd begged approval for at 3 a.m. I picked up the frantic hospital call in the dead of night, sobbing so hard I could barely form coherent sentences while dialing Wang's personal cell. My mom had collapsed from a sudden cerebral hemorrhage, the ER doctor's voice sharp and urgent as he warned me her vitals were slipping fast. Wang's tone had sounded warm, sympathetic over the line, no trace of anger or judgment. Family comes first, Lin Wan. Take all the time you need. Don't stress about project deadlines right now. I'd hung up the call thinking I worked for a leader who understood human crisis, someone I'd spent 5 years bleeding for without a second thought. I joined Wang's startup fresh out of university, a naive 22-year-old with 0 industry connections. I'd sat with him through endless bank meetings when the company's cash flow tanked 2 years in, chugging cheap liquor until I collapsed from a gastric bleed just to secure our first round of seed investment. I pulled all-nighters for 2 straight months on our flagship client launch, surviving on energy drinks and 90-minute catnaps before blacking out mid-boardroom presentation. I'd even stepped between him and his furious wife when she stormed the office screaming about his suspected infidelity, absorbing every ugly accusation and shoved so he wouldn't lose face in front of the whole team. I treated him like a business partner, a mentor, almost family, and he'd stored that emergency medical absence as ammunition to dock my life or death commission months later. No warning, no formal disciplinary meeting beforehand. Wang said it's a company rule to penalize unplanned absences during peak quarterly push. My team lead's quiet text pinged my phone as I stared blankly at the bank statement. He brought your name up in the leadership huddle yesterday, framed it as setting a company-wide example. A cold, sticky sweat soaked through my blouse as I processed the betrayal, but the worst blow landed 10 minutes later, when every employee's corporate inbox chimed in unison. The subject line blared in bold red font, official commendation. Market manager Lin Wan set standard for upholding corporate discipline. I clicked the email link with trembling hands, scanning Wang's hollow, performative prose line by line. He opened by gushing over my 5 years of relentless overtime and client wins, then twisted the knife hard, claiming I'd voluntarily accepted a massive commission deduction to demonstrate commitment to company protocol amid our critical sales sprint. The closing paragraph demanded every staff member study my selfless sacrifice and follow my lead, capped with a giant, mocking exclamation mark. My eyes darted around the open concept market floor as dozens of colleagues pulled up the email on their monitors, their heads turning to glance at my desk with mixed flashes of pity, schadenfreude, quiet judgment. I could hear the rapid-fire buzz of our team group chat blowing up beside me, every conversation dissecting my public humiliation, painting me as the cautionary tale Wang wanted every overworked staff member to fear. I dropped my phone face down on the desk, my nails digging deep enough into my palm to draw faint streaks of blood. Every ounce of voluntary loyalty I'd poured into this company evaporated in that moment. No more uncompensated after-hours work, no more bending internal policies to rush project deliverables, no more sacrificing my personal life to prop up Wang's bottom line. If he planned to weaponize the employee handbook to steal my mom's medical funds, I'd weaponize that exact same rulebook right back at him. My only mission from that day forward, force him to return every dollar he'd taken and dismantle the exploitative overtime culture he'd built to exploit every single person on staff. The next morning, I rolled up to the office lobby at 8:59 and 47 seconds a.m., my heels clicking slow and deliberate against the tile flooring as I approached the facial recognition clock-in terminal. The machine's robotic voice droned, "Clock-in successful. Good morning, Lin Wan," the exact second the clock ticked over to 9 a.m. Not a single second earlier. No more lingering at my desk pre-shift to answer client emails like I'd done every day for half a decade. I set my tote bag down, booted my work laptop, and tackled my assigned workload strictly within official business hours, cutting out every self-imposed extra task I'd volunteered for years prior. By 5:59 p.m., I'd fully filed every active project folder, closed all client message threads, stuffed my cosmetics and personal items back into my bag, and stood waiting by the exit terminal. The rest of the team remained glued to their desks, typing furiously, debating last-minute project revisions, stuck in the endless cycle of unpaid overtime Wang had normalized as team dedication. Every pair of eyes in the room snapped toward me the second I lifted my bag off the counter. "I'm heading out for the day," I stated flatly, no extra explanation, no apology for leaving on schedule. I scanned my face at the clock-out terminal as the clock struck 6 p.m. Sharp, the automated clock-out successful. Have a good evening, echoing across the silent workspace before I pushed through the glass front doors into the warm evening breeze. The sky was bright, streaked with soft orange sunset hues I'd never once stopped to notice in 5 years of nightly midnight departures. I kept this rigid, rule-bound routine locked in place for 3 full consecutive workdays, 9 a.m. clock-in, 6 p.m. Clock out, 0 after-hours communication, 0 voluntary favors for teammates stuck on rushed deadlines. A junior account coordinator ran over to my desk mid-afternoon on day 3, panic etched across his face as he held up an unfinished client proposal draft. Lin Wan, can you stay late tonight to walk me through this client's unique budget requests? The deadline's tomorrow morning, and I can't untangle their old contract terms on my own. You've always helped us pull all nines before. I glanced at the digital clock in the bottom right corner of my screen, 1 minute till quitting time, and shook my head without hesitation. I can't assist without outside official business hours. The project timeline formally marks tomorrow, 10 a.m. As the hard submission cutoff, you've got plenty of working hours tomorrow to finish revisions, and you can flag questions first thing in the morning. The kid froze mid-sentence, mouth hanging open, before slumping back to his workstation defeated. Word of my new rigid boundaries spread fast, and Wang's irritation simmered visibly behind the closed door of his executive office. His secretary's internal line rang my desk phone at 4 p.m. On day 4, her tone stiff and rehearsed. Ms. Lin, Wang Zong would like to see you in his office immediately before you leave for the day. I gathered my notebook and walked down the hallway without rushing, pushing open his office door to a thick cloud of cigar smoke mixed with expensive men's cologne. Wang slouched in his oversized leather executive chair, pretending to fixate on his desktop monitor, intentionally ignoring my presence for 5 full minutes to manufacture intimidation, an old power play he'd used on every subordinate who dared push back against his demands. Once I would have fidgeted, stammered an apology to break the awkward silence, desperate to smooth over his bad mood. Now I stood motionless, studying his dying potted money tree on the windowsill, mentally tallying how many chemo sessions $6,000 would cover for my mother. He slammed his fist hard against a mahogany desk so hard the water glass beside his keyboard rattled, jumping to his feet and closing the distance between us until his face hovered inches from mine, spit flicking the air as he shouted. What the hell is wrong with your attitude lately? You clock out the second 6 hits every single day, drag your feet on every project assigned to you, act like you couldn't care less about this company's quarterly targets. You think docking a portion of your commission gives you free rein to slack off and disrespect me? If you're unhappy with your role here, walk out the door right now. There's a line of applicants begging to take your manager position tomorrow. I held eye contact with his bloodshot, furious eyes, my voice steady and even, no trace of anger or tears, just plain, unemotional honesty. Wang Zong, I'm scared of getting more money taken out of my paycheck. Wang's enraged tirade cut off mid-sentence instantly, his jaw hanging open mid-rant, every ounce of his manufactured rage freezing solid on his face. He'd prepared a laundry list of counterarguments, reprimands, and threats to shut down my complaints. He'd never anticipated I'd hurl his own corporate rule logic straight back at him, weaponizing his choice to penalize my mother's medical funds as the core reason I refused to deviate from the official schedule ever again. I watched his expression shift from unbridled fury to stunned, flustered confusion, and I knew the real battle had only just kicked off. Wang stood frozen for nearly 10 full seconds after my quiet retort, his chest heaving as he struggled to form a coherent reply, face cycling from bright red to sickly pale blue. He waved a dismissive hand like I was a buzzing fly disrupting his work, his voice rough and strained with suppressed rage. Get out of my office right this second. I don't want to hear another word from you. I turned and exited without a single backward glance, my shoulders loose and unburdened for the first time in years. That brief confrontation confirmed everything I'd suspected. Wang operated on a double standard. Company policies only applied to rank-and-file staff when they benefited his authority, yet he ignored every single written clause the second it inconvenienced his personal agenda. I made up my mind that afternoon to weaponize the full employee handbook against every unreasonable demand he tossed my way. The next morning, I pulled the dust-covered official policy manual off the storage shelf in the copy room, printed every single section covering attendance, overtime, project approval workflows, performance deductions, and cross-departmental handoffs, and taped the full stack to the front of my desk for every coworker and manager to see. For years, I'd cut procedural corners to speed up project delivery, skipping redundant signature chains and overlapping approval steps to shave days off client turnaround times. That practice ended cold turkey. 3 department heads needed to sign off on every client budget adjustment form per written policy, and I refused to streamline the process even if 2 of the supervisors sat at adjacent desks. I sent the document to the first signatory, waited for their digital stamp, forwarded it to the second, then the third, even if the full workflow dragged a 2-hour task out across 2 full business days. Every project deadline was hit precisely on the printed timeline, no early delivery, no voluntary weekend revisions to accommodate rush production teams downstream. A senior teammate pulled me aside midweek, desperation thick in her voice as she gestured to a high-value manufacturing client's stalled proposal. Lin Wan, this factory client is blowing up my phone nonstop. If we don't polish this draft tonight and send it over, they're going to pull their contract entirely. Can we stay late to knock it out together like we always do? I tilted my head toward the printed employee handbook taped to my desk, tapping the printed project timeline clause with my pen. The formal project charter mark submission due tomorrow, 10 a.m. We can complete as much as possible within our 9 to 6 hours today and finish the rest first thing tomorrow morning. The policy doesn't mandate unpaid after-hours labor to hit self-imposed early deadlines. Her shoulders slumped, and she walked away without another word, resentment simmering off her as she returned to her desk. The domino effect of my strict adherence to protocol hit the company within a week. A flagship retail client's customized marketing campaign got pushed to the absolute final submission window, leaving 0 buffer time for the production team to source custom raw materials. The rushed manufacturing run churned out hundreds of defective finished goods, triggering a formal client complaint that landed directly in Wang's executive inbox first thing Monday morning. Staff from other departments cornered me in the break room repeatedly, calling me rigid, selfish, a roadblock dragging the entire firm's productivity down. Most of my teammates avoided speaking to me entirely, scared one would associate them with my rebellious attitude, and slash their bonuses too. Only Zhang Jie, a market department veteran who'd watched Wang's exploitative management style unfold for 8 years, slipped me a warm mug of tea after a cross-departmental coworker chewed me out in front of the whole office. You're alienating everyone around you, Juan, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one overheard our conversation. Is this retaliation really worth burning all your workplace relationships down? I offered her a thin, tired smile, stirring sugar into my hot water. If I bend over backwards to keep every coworker happy, I'm the one who loses the money my mom needs to survive. I can't afford to pick that sacrifice anymore. Wang retaliated swiftly, launching a campaign to overload my workload with meaningless administrative busywork designed to eat up every minute of my official shift. He sent a company-wide memo mandating weekly progress reports 10 times more detailed than the original template, requiring line-by-line data source breakdowns, 3 separate predictive trend models, and backup reference files for every single metric listed. He dropped a secondary assignment on my plate out of nowhere: reorganize every single project file I'd managed over the past 3 years, sorted by a brand new, absurdly convoluted filing system he'd invented overnight with zero input from the admin team. Instead of pushing back or complaining about the impossible workload, I drafted formal project planning spreadsheets breaking down every task Wang had assigned, calculated exact hour allocations for each administrative chore, and emailed detailed daily progress updates to his inbox every evening before 6 p.m. Wang's own. Attached is the weekly data analysis draft. Only raw data collection is fully completed at this stage. Full trend modeling will require 3 full business workdays to finalize. I typed into each status update. The 3-year file reorganization project timeline estimates a full calendar month to complete all sorting, scanning, and digital archiving. I will not be able to onboard any new client projects while this administrative priority remains active per your written directive. I'd expected Wang to grow frustrated by my refusal to prioritize revenue-generating client work over his pointless busy work, but what infuriated him far more was how I weaponized the official overtime policy buried deep in the back of the employee handbook. The printed clause clearly stated all after-hours labor required a pre-approved overtime request form signed by both department leadership and the CEO, with legally mandated overtime pay or compensatory time off for every extra minute worked. Since the company's founding, Wang had completely ignored this rule, framing all after-hours work as mandatory unpaid team dedication. I started submitting a formal overtime request email to his inbox at exactly 6:01 p.m. every single workday, no matter how trivial the extra task I'd lingered 1 minute past clock out to finish. If I stayed an extra 5 minutes to file loose paperwork, an email hit his inbox citing 5 minutes of overtime. If I responded to one last client text before grabbing my bag, I logged 15 minutes of overtime for post-shift correspondence. Even stopping to refill my water fountain bottle after 6 triggered a formal overtime submission form CC'd to the HR department for official record keeping. A junior admin pulled me aside one afternoon, whispering that she'd witnessed Wang hurl his wireless mouse against his office wall after opening my 5th trivial overtime request email that week, plastic fragments scattering across his carpet as he screamed behind locked doors. The culture of free labor he'd built for half a decade was crumbling piece by piece under the weight of his own written policies. Company-wide operational efficiency plummeted visibly over the next 2 weeks. Major client accounts flooded the executive line with cancellation threats over repeated project delays, and Wang scheduled back-to-back emergency all-staff meetings to single me out as the root cause of every missed deadline. During one packed conference room town hall, he slammed his fist on the presentation table, his voice echoing off the ceiling panels. Lin Wan, the entire market division's output has tanked drastically under your management. Multiple high-value clients are threatening to terminate long-term contracts, and every project timeline is running weeks behind schedule. How do you plan to explain this catastrophic drop in productivity to the board? I stood calmly, pulling up my color-coded work hour logs, formal task priority assignments, and Wang's own written administrative directives on the overhead projector for every single staff member to view. Every task I've completed follows your explicit written instructions and the official corporate workflow rules printed in the employee handbook. The 3-year file reorganization and hyper-detailed weekly reporting you mandated consume 80% of my standard 9 to 6 work hours, leaving limited bandwidth for active client campaigns. Every cross-departmental sign-off delay follows the mandatory multi-stage approval chain outlined in policy. If the formal workflow protocols create unmanageable timeline gaps, the company can vote to revise the employee handbook's internal processes at any time. Alternatively, you can formally approve my overtime request forms, and I will gladly extend my working hours to clear project backlogs after 6 p.m. Wang's face turned a deep, livid purple, trapped in a no-win trap in front of the entire company. He couldn't admit his own meaningless administrative tasks were tanking team productivity, nor could he openly acknowledge he'd never intended to compensate staff for overtime labor. The meeting dissolved into an awkward, suffocating silence minutes later, every employee filing out while stealing glances between Wang's furious stiff posture and my unruffled, neutral expression. I spent 3 full afternoons sorting through the mountains of archived project files Wang had forced me to reorganize, stacking old paper contracts and expense receipts into labeled cardboard boxes in the storage closet. Halfway through sorting a stack of 2-year-old business reimbursement forms, a crumpled stack of personal receipts slipped out from between formal client catering invoices, tucked away to avoid audit scrutiny. I spread the documents out on the storage room folding table, my heart slowing as I processed every fraudulent entry one by one. A luxury 5-star restaurant dinner receipt labeled Client Business Catering, dated on a day the referenced client was confirmed out of town on international travel. A designer luxury boutique shopping slip logged under Client Gift Procurement. The items listed high-end men's watches and leather briefcases Wang had gifted his personal friends outside company business. Multiple golf course membership and game day receipts totaling over $16,000, all categorized as team-building event expenses to write off on corporate taxes. For years, I'd brushed these sketchy reimbursement entries off as unspoken executive loopholes, choosing to overlook them to keep team operations moving fast. Now every receipt became rock solid, documented evidence of Wang's illegal corporate expense fraud, a lethal weapon I could deploy if he continued escalating his retaliation against me. I pulled out my personal phone, photographed every single receipt front and back, labeled each file with clear dates, dollar amounts, and fake reimbursement categories, and stored the full photo archive in a password-locked cloud folder only I could access. Wang's new daily team log mandate kicked off the following business morning, and I complied with his order without a single pushback, drafting an absurdly granular task reporting template for every member of my 7-person team. Each log required breakdowns of every individual task, exact minute timestamps for completion, written descriptions of every roadblock encountered, and documented solutions for every minor hiccup during their shift. Every evening at 5:50 p.m., I compiled all 7 multi-page daily logs into a single zip file and emailed the full packet to Wang's executive inbox, CC'd directly to HR for permanent archival records. Wang initially reviewed each entry line by line, firing off lengthy feedback emails full of nitpicky criticism to demonstrate his total authority over my team. Within 10 business days, however, the endless stack of tedious minute-by-minute logs overwhelmed his schedule entirely. He wasted 3 full hours every single morning dissecting trivial task breakdowns that held zero impact on company revenue, his own core executive responsibilities falling by the wayside as he drowned in micromanagement busywork he created to punish me. I spotted him exiting his office multiple times each afternoon with sunken, exhausted eye bags, slumping against break room walls, sipping cold coffee, a stark contrast to his usual polished, arrogant demeanor. While Wang burned himself out micromanaging my team's daily schedules, he launched a quiet smear campaign to turn the entire office against me, planting anonymous rumors in team group chats that framed me as a bitter, lazy troublemaker tanking the company's quarterly performance metrics. The gossip spread fast. Coworkers whispered I'd let personal resentment override my professional duties, that my rigid 9-to-6 schedule dragged every department's bonus potential down, that my refusal to work unpaid overtime sabotaged every cross-team collaborative project. Most staff avoided initiating conversation with me entirely, scared Wang would mark them as sympathetic to my rebellion and slash their end-of-quarter bonuses as punishment. One newly hired junior sales associate cornered me by the water cooler mid-afternoon, his voice loud enough for every break room occupant to overhear, frustration boiling over into unfiltered accusation. Lin Wan, whatever personal grudge you hold against Wang Zhong shouldn't tank all of our paychecks this quarter. The entire market division's performance scores are dropping because you refuse to pull overtime shifts, and we're all going to suffer for your petty vendetta. I set my water bottle down on the counter calmly, unlocking my phone to pull up my daily performance tracking spreadsheet, packed with hard numerical data to counter his vague, hearsay-based complaints. Can you cite specific quarterly performance metrics that prove my schedule is dragging the team's results down? I've closed 3 major client accounts single-handedly this month, with total contract revenue outperforming every other individual manager on staff. Your personal client portfolio ran 12% over pre-approved budget last month due to incomplete preliminary market research. You never documented that overspending in your weekly report, despite logging 2 hours of unpaid overtime every evening. Who's actually dragging the department's financial targets down? The kid's face flushed bright red, every prepared argument crumbling in the face of concrete, verifiable data. He mumbled a half-hearted apology and fled the break room, leaving the other gathered coworkers staring at me with newfound cautious respect, their automatic assumptions about my slacking shattered by hard performance numbers. I recognized Wang's secondary retaliation tactic within days. He quietly siphoned my long-term core client accounts over to Zhao, another market manager infamous for empty flattery and zero hands-on client problem-solving skill, a man who spent more time currying favor with Wang in executive meetings than refining client campaign strategies. Zhao sauntered over to my desk one midday, waving printed client contact files for my 3 highest revenue accounts, partnerships I'd nurtured over 3 years, responsible for 40% of the company's annual total income, with a smug, taunting grin. Wang Zhong reassigned these 3 major client portfolios to my oversight, Lin Wan. You've got your hands full sorting old archives and approving team daily logs, so no need to waste your bandwidth on these high-stakes accounts anymore. I nodded once, gesturing to the printed client transfer policy taped to my desk beside the employee handbook. Per official internal protocol, all client portfolio handoffs require a fully completed transfer application form listing full partnership history, active contract terms, ongoing project roadblocks, and both managers' formal digital signatures filed with the legal department for permanent record storage. The form is available for download on the company OA system. You'll need to compile 3 years of client email threads, contract addendums, and campaign deliverables to complete the required documentation, which will take roughly 8 full business days to organize. Zhao's cocky smile vanished instantly, realizing Wang's verbal offhand reassignment didn't bypass the formal multi-step transfer process he'd ignored entirely. He stormed straight to Wang's office to complain minutes later, trapped by the same rulebook Wang had forced every other staff member to abide by when penalizing my commission check. The inevitable disaster struck exactly 1 week after Zhao took partial ownership of my flagship manufacturing client, Account A, run by General Manager Li, a business leader who'd only signed on with our firm because of my specialized industry knowledge and consistent crisis resolution support. Zhao misinterpreted a critical technical parameter the client had requested for their new production line during a rushed lunch meeting, submitting incorrect manufacturing specs to their production team without cross-referencing the historical project files I compiled over 2 years of collaboration. The client factory produced nearly $1 million worth of defective semi-finished goods based on Zhao's flawed data, and GM Li called Wang directly to threaten full contract termination plus formal financial damages litigation. Wang flew cross-country with Zhao the next morning to beg for a second chance, sitting through a 2-hour dressing down from GM Li that laid bare exactly why the client had trusted my leadership over any other manager on staff. We partnered with your company exclusively because Lin Wan delivers precise, reliable solutions tailored to our factory's unique limitations. GM Lee told Wang bluntly, his tone icy with unmasked frustration. Her replacement can't even parse basic technical requirements from our project briefs, and this costly error is entirely on your mismanagement of key client resources. Either you send Lin Wan back to lead this account immediately, or we cut every active partnership and pursue legal compensation for our production losses. That night, I received a private text message from GM Lee, sent separate from all corporate communication channels, filled with quiet sympathy for the unfair treatment Wang had subjected me to. I know Wang's been punishing you unjustly. Lin Wan, I've pushed him hard to fix this mess, and this account won't stay operational unless you're back at the helm. No one else understands our operational needs like you do. The next business morning, Wang showed up at my workstation in person for the first time in 5 years, dark under eyes, unkempt hair, all traces of his usual polished executive confidence stripped away. He shut my office door, gesturing for me to sit across from my desk, his voice rough and defeated. Lin Wan, you need to fly out and repair Account A's damaged partnership immediately. This contract collapse will sink our quarterly revenue targets entirely. I leaned back in my chair, my tone completely neutral, no hint of triumph or malice, only strict adherence to the official job responsibility outline printed in the employee handbook. Wang Zone, my current formal assigned workload consists solely of 3-year archive reorganization and daily team log approvals per your written management directive. Account A's active projects were formally transferred out of my portfolio via your internal memo last week, so resolving their production error falls outside my official job scope. Any cross-departmental task outside my assigned duties requires a formal internal work assistance request form with documented overtime compensation outlined, plus a pre-approved overtime submission form for travel and after-hours client crisis resolution. Wang's knuckles whitened where he gripped the edge of my desk, his body trembling with suppressed rage, yet he had zero room to negotiate. Losing Account A meant catastrophic financial losses for the entire company, a risk the board of directors would never forgive him for creating with his petty retaliation against me. He gritted his teeth, forcing the words out through clenched jaws. Fine, I'll sign every formal request form you need, approve all overtime compensation and travel pay. Just fix this client crisis before they file a lawsuit against us. I agreed to resolve the client's production failure only after Wang formally committed to full financial compensation, matching the $6,000 he'd unlawfully deducted from my commission months prior, framed as a one-time special crisis performance bonus to avoid open admission of his unfair payroll penalty. 2 days of back-to-back client meetings and revised production planning later, I smoothed over every rift between the factory and our firm, drafting a cost-neutral remediation plan GM Lee signed off on without pushback, salvaging the million-dollar partnership entirely. Wang sat silent through the client dinner, forced to watch GM Lee heap praise on my professional expertise while he swallowed bitter, unspoken humiliation.